Good night to all of you. I've been missing you for a whole week. How are you people doing? Well, we're on again tonight for more of advancing the cause. And tonight, like last week, we missed you last week. But I just want to say Happy International Women's Day. Every day, as a matter of fact, should be International Women's Day. But to all our women, all those stalwarts who have been fighting for us out there, happy International Women's Day to you. And to those persons who would have celebrated their birthdays, happy birthday to you. And for those persons who are sorrowing at this time, we feel your pain. And we extend our condolences to you, and we trust that God is going to grant you the strength and comfort you need at this time to go through this phase of your life. And very quickly on advancing the cause, we like to shout out our friends who are watching us from all over. Those who are watching us in Georgetown, those who are watching us in Berbice, those who are watching us from the Essequibo coast, and of course, our friends in North America, our friends in Brooklyn, our friends in New Jersey, all over. Good night to you. I know we have some of our friends who are there watching us from Switzerland. Good night to you too. And everywhere else around the Caribbean, good night to you. Just tell your friend advancing the cause is on and we're ready to talk. But before we go into our discussions for tonight, tonight promises to be quite exciting. And we have our guest on the program here who's going to be here to share with us. And he has been struggling there for the rights and justice for the masses. Many people don't do that. What many people are doing, I shouldn't say many, we have a few who are right up there in that elite group and they're enjoying the good life. And the masses are struggling to enjoy what the good life was supposed to be offering them. But on our highlights, very, very quickly, just 2 days ago, we saw a teacher that was assaulted by a parent and a few students. Now, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to continue to accept this kind of behavior. How many more teachers have got to be beaten up before we can take a very drastic action against these errant parents and students who feel that they have a right to beat up on teachers? Now, this is not going to continue any longer. As a matter of fact, the teachers union, we have said to our teachers, teachers will have to represent them. You will have to represent them yourselves. By any means necessary, you're going to have to represent yourselves because we cannot continue to have this. And while I'm on that, I want to say to the police commissioner acting or the commissioner of police acting, you've got to do some more work with some of your men and your women. We cannot continue to have citizens calling the police station only to hear you don't have patrols and you don't have anybody that you can send. As soon as there's a protest being touted, they got loads and loads of police vehicles coming from all over. And yesterday and the day before at Fort Wellington Secondary, we couldn't have a police patrol or a police vehicle to come there with policemen or women to investigate what was happening there. That's sad. And when people talk about the police force, you get very upset. The folks get very upset, but we have to talk about you. We have to call you out sometimes. Are you going to wait for a teacher to be lying on the floor motionless before you turn up there in your drones? Come on. You've got to do something better than you're doing. We've been saying all the time, we've been advocating that we should have regular police patrols around our schools. When are you going to start doing it? If you have not yet decided, let me ask you to start doing that now. Patrol around the schools. Find time to do that. We see police vehicles parked up here, parked up there, parked up in front of clubs, parked up at restaurants. Come on, let them do what they're supposed to be doing, which says you're there to protect and serve or serve and protect. Do that for us. And then we saw a 22-year-old chopped to death by a 27-year-old. And, it's every week. Every week we're having accidents, people dying tragically. We're having murders. Of course, we know that every time the PPP is around, these things happen. But come on, citizens, we have to be much more careful with the way we operate. Violence is not the answer to our issues. So let's stop the violence. Let's stop shooting. Let's stop chopping. Let's stop stabbing. Come on, let's stop that, because Guyana, we already don't have enough persons here to share the wealth. And if you keep doing these things, then we wouldn't have anybody just now. We'll have foreigners coming in the country and enjoying what we have. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, violence is not the answer. And then as we move down, we saw Caribbean Airlines again in the limelight, where passengers have been stranded. Passengers are stranded again. People already had their time to go to work the next day, and they're still there. They can't get out because they don't have flights to carry them out. Flights have been rescheduled and rescheduled. Come on, Caribbean Air, you've got to do something about this. People are paying huge sums of monies, and you've got to do something better than what you're doing. Now, I notice we have the Paxlovid tablets now for COVID. That's going to be the treatment, the pill for the treatment, the pill for the COVID treatment. I hope that the pills that would have been acquired, that these pills are coming from the direct source, and that we don't have a middleman again inside. You remember the story with Sputnik, when we had a middleman, and by the time the vaccines got here, some were expired, and a whole lot of plenty monies were spent to purchase those vaccines. I'm hoping that these are coming directly from the producers. And then we had again fire, more fire, every time fire. We've got to be more careful. We have to unplug those fans, unplug those irons, unplug utensils or items that, well, I shouldn't say items, unplug appliances that you are not using, so that we are not going to have unnecessary sparks, unnecessary fires. And we have to monitor what we use too. We have to turn off some of those taps, turn off some of the lights and so on, especially when we have children at home. Let's be careful, and let's ensure that our children are safe and everyone else is safe, and our homes are safe when we leave our homes. And then, of course, we have, not too long, we had a U.S. team representing the U.S. Vice President here visiting with us, and they're having talks. I know we've seen quite a few pictures, and the pictures tells us 1,000 words. The faces, you know, the images and the expressions you see on some of the faces there, it doesn't speak well. But we're going to talk much more about that in a little while. I want to bring our guest right on. He's no stranger to these kinds of programs. And I want to say to you, he's Guyanese, 100% Guyanese. And they ain't got nobody could bring him home unless he wants to come home. So let me just dispel that. Nobody could bring him home unless he wants to come home. And so we're going to ask our guest, who has been in the forefront there. Hi, Ricky, how are you doing? Ricky has been
Good night, Sister Coretta. How are you doing?
I am doing well. All right. And you know, as long as I have you here, then I feel even more better than I've been feeling. And I'm much more energized when you're around. You know, this name, Rickford Burke, it's causing sleepless nights, sleepless days. People can't rest. Every time it's about Rickford Burke. Rickford, tell us a little about you while you were here in Guyana, because I'm sure quite a lot of persons, they see Rickford Burke operating in the US and fighting for Guyanese, and you've been in the struggle for equal rights and justice. But quite a lot of people don't know anything much about Rickford Burke. Tell us something about Rickford Burke.
That's funny. It brings back some nostalgia. I was just on a radio program in Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, and the producer was reading about me, and I was like, wow, well, that's me. Well, I left Guyana as a teenager, I think 18, between 18 and 19. I'm from Bartica. I left Bartica at a very young age, probably age 1 or 2, and my dad is from Maikoni. My dad was transferred from was a police officer. He was transferred from Bartica to on the East Coast, and we began living at Maikoni, where he's from. Our house burned down. I don't have much recollection of that. But my cousins always teased me and said, during the fire, everybody escaped through the door. I jumped through the window. I guess I wanted to be out faster. So I jumped through the window and took off. But then we lived at Golden Grove. My dad was stationed at Coven John Police Station. While we were at Coven John, I attended Coven John Primary School and then Hindu College, which is Coven John Secondary School. It was in the compound of the ashram there. I had lots and lots of Hindu friends, Indian friends, Muslim friends. We all celebrated all the East Indian holidays, all the Hindu holidays, all the Muslim holidays. We played Pagwa, threw each other in the trench. We celebrated Sabatri together, Idul Hazar, Idul Fitr, everything. It was a community. It was like a family going to that school. And we can come back to that, but I didn't know anything about racism until 1992 when I saw PPP, East Indian triumphalism, and it changed the whole perspective in the country, changed our culture, changed our orientation. I attended, because my dad moved a lot, I attended 3 schools, secondary schools, Strothville Secondary when we went on the West Coast, St. Rose's for a short while. I became a pupil teacher at age 16.
Oh.
Yes, I was a teacher at Iflot Community High School. Our Iflot Primary, the primary school had a community high school section. After that, at 16, I started to go to University of Guyana with some of my friends. I have a good contingent of friends who were in so many different professions, lawyers, doctors, who started UG with me. My parents were so, particularly my mother, insisting on us getting a good education while we were taking CXC. That woman was so brutal. She made us enroll at UG. And we went to UG for whatever, if we were doing biology, we went to UG and did biology. I forgot the department, but we weren't eligible to fully enroll at UG. But I think it might have been the adult and continuing education classes that they would have on the East Coast at Golden Grove Primary School and so on. Yes. And at that very young age, 15, we did biology, we did international relations, we did developmental psychology. Really, really brutal, but I thank God for it. I was in the YSM. I moved to the rank of chairman of the YSM. I had all the positions: general secretary, national treasurer, national chairman. I began working for the Minister of Public Service too at age 16. When I left teaching, I went I did work study at Ministry of Regional Development. That time, the ministers there were Jeffrey Thomas and Ermia Johnson. My grandfather, who was a regional chairman and then became the chairman of NCLDO, was in the same ministry too. He had the rank of like a junior minister. So I did work study there at the accounts department. Then I went on to become technical assistant to the Minister for Public Service, which is Faith Harding, at age 17. I remember that I had to, in that capacity, Faith tasked me with writing a speech for Mrs. Hoyt, who was then the First Lady. Desmond Hoyt was the president. And she was going to give a speech at a church in New Amsterdam that was, I think they were celebrating their centennial anniversary, the Congregational Church that the slaves attended in New Amsterdam. At the time, Pastor Monroe was the pastor there. And I wrote that speech, and Desmond Hoyt read the speech. The president read the speech and asked to see me, and I became his special assistant. So he stole me from Faith Harding, and I worked with him straight through. That was 92, 91, 92. I worked with him, and then I left to come to study. After the PNC lost the elections in 1992, I went back to Guyana several times after that, primarily to help the PNC with elections. Myself and Dr. Sean Cambridge. Sean was studying medicine in South Africa. I was here in New York studying as well, and we both gave up school and went back and sacrificed to help run the PNC campaign in 1990. I went back in 94. for that mayoral campaign where Faith was the mayoral candidate in Georgetown. And in 97, we went back, John and I went back and helped to run that 97 election campaign. I almost got kicked out of school because I had to stay on because we had that prolonged period that led to the
97.
Hermanston Accord. I was there as special assistant to Desmond Hoyt
Mhm, mhm.
when they crafted the Hermanston Accord. I was there. I stayed on when they went on to St. Lucia. That's when they had the St. Lucia Pact. That's Janet Jagan and Desmond Hoyt. Both we had such an intense period. A lot of people don't know our history. In the 1997 elections were stolen by the PPP, and they swore in Mrs. Jagan before the elections were declared, before the results, before all of the votes could have been counted. They swore in Mrs. Jagan. The courts tried to stop it. She threw away the writ with which she was
Uh-huh.
served.
Mhm.
And because of the confusion, CARICOM had two people, supposedly the heads of government, going to the CARICOM summit. Desmond Hoy and Mrs. Jagan. And at that summit, Guyana was the main
Item
topic.
on the agenda. Hmm.
I remember Aubrey Norton was the general secretary. He traveled with President Hoyt to that summit, and I remember something striking happened at that summit. The uh, the PPP government declared a state of emergency, but never announced it. It was only the instrument of that declaration was only given to the police. So the police were acting with emergency powers unbeknown to the population. And we got wind of it and sent it on to St. Lucia to Mr. Hoyt. When Mr. Hoyt confronted her, Aubrey can probably talk more about that because he was there, she denied it until it was leaked to us. And I remember faxing it to Dr. Carla Barnett. Now she's the CARICOM Secretary General. She was the Deputy CARICOM Secretary General then. And it was a fascinating period of time for me. I gained a lot of experience at a very, very young age. I'll shut up after I say this. At one time I thought Desmond Hoyt, who actually became my surrogate father, I thought he never liked me because he was so harsh with me. I'm a teenager. I'm 17 years old. I'm working for this guy. He's the president of the country. And one day he called me in about something, and it might have had to do with YSM. And or that was before I started to work for him formally. And we had a breakfast with Burnham. We were so impressed with Burnham, Forbes Burnham. I didn't grow up under his leadership, but when we listened to his speeches, they were so
Hmm.
inspirational. And
Yep.
the YSM I suggested to the YSM that for his anniversary, we must do a breakfast that celebrates him at the Pegasus. Everybody liked the idea, and we went ahead and invited diplomatic corps and the party stalwarts and government officials. We were in government. And Desmond Hoyt was away at a CARICOM heads of government conference in St. Vincent. And when he came back, he heard that we had invited Dr. Jagan, who was the opposition leader, the American ambassador. He called me like you think you guys are the government. I want to see the plans for this breakfast. And he was shocked that we had it so covered. We had
Hmm.
contacted Enrico Wolford, who was then the general manager for what is now NCN. It was called the Film Center at the time. And Enrico pulled a vast variety of Burnham's speeches and videos. And Burnham always converted his speeches into little booklets. And we had all of that on display. We have never seen anything like that again since. I think in Guyana, it
I
was
know.
it was such a powerful moment that we relived the leadership of Burnham. We heard his speeches from independence played back at the breakfast, straight through to just before he died, his last address to the nation and all that. And we had a good time. It was so inspirational. We had a lot of young people who were inspired by President Burnham at the time. We don't see that now. And so maybe we have to start reliving back those memories and replaying those speeches so our young people can understand what it is to be a visionary and what it is to articulate a vision for the country and to take the country from where we were then to where Burnham took it. I don't think, even though the PPP like to curse Burnham, like I said, I don't know anything about Burnham. I grew up under Desmond Hoyt. But from my reading of history, from my observation of the country, beyond where Burnham took Guyana, I don't think we have seen any major development in the country. The only major development we've had is the Berbice Bridge. Other than that, we've had advancement, but I have not seen major development. Like Burnham, for instance, brought electricity through the length and breadth of the country. We've not seen anything so transformational. Maybe when we
Mhm.
bridge the Essequibo, I can say, yes, that's transformational development. But so far, all the PPP is jumping up and down. They've been in power now 23 plus 3, 26 years over the last 32 years. And they have not advanced the country. I don't think they have the intellectual capacity to do it. And so I am saying that we can develop the country only together. We need to see coalition government. We need to see a combination of the Amerindians and the East Indians who don't support the PP and the mixed race and the black folks that don't support the PP need to come together, because if that happens, they're the majority. And I think that's where the intellectual capacity lies. And so I would like to see an inclusive government, not the PPP government, but an inclusive government, something like the coalition government, so that we can really advance the country as Guyanese together. I'm not saying leave the PPP out, but it would be opposed to this method of one-party rule that the PPP is advancing in our country now, and even ethnic rule.
Well, Rickford, thanks for that was a mouthful you gave to us. And I know quite a lot of people did not know so much about Rickford Burke. All you hear about Rickford Burke, that is being peddled on NCN and some of these radio stations. Oh, Rickford Burke is a racist. Rickford Burke is against the PPP. Rickford Burke is a criminal. Rickford Burke is this. Rickford Burke is disrespectful. That's what you hear about Rickford Burke. But I'm happy that you're here and you can share with us who really Rickford Burke is and what was he involved in. And I'm sure quite a lot of persons, they're probably with their eyes open and they're thinking, what? The YSM, they were able to invite Dr. Chedi Jagan to a function and he turned up at that function, unlike what we have now. As a matter of fact, let me say to you, even when the PPP are having their functions, the coalition, the opposition, they're not invited. Very few occasions they invite the opposition too. And when they do extend an invitation to you, it's late. It's a couple of hours. You get an invitation at 12 o'clock for a function at 7 o'clock. Which is saying that they really didn't want you to come, but they send the invitation to you so that you wouldn't say you were not invited. And we don't see the kind of cohesiveness within the PPP with regards to wanting Guyana to develop. And so you get this flam about this one Guyana. And I want you to tell us your interpretation, how you feel about this one Guyana, which we're going to come to just now. But the thing is, as a country, we have been through quite a lot. And even today, we still cannot get to where we're supposed to be because some persons have decided that they want to be, it's winner take all. And this is for us. I just returned from Region 6. And I'm there, and the teachers at that meeting said, they're saying, Miss, you forgot to say that the people we're dealing with now, they are no ordinary beings. They despise the teachers because they feel that the majority of teachers are Afro-Guyanese and they presume that we are coalition supporters. And Miss, maybe because of you too, they're despising us. But they say, we big and we got sense and we hope they got sense. So I just want to hear your comments on this whole One Guyana issue. And we're going to talk about why you've decided to fight for equal rights and justice for the ordinary man.
Well, first, let me address the whole issue of NCN and the demonization of people. I don't believe that the PPP leadership come from a civilized orientation of human beings. I don't think they're civilized. I think they see political opposition as enemies to be killed or enemies to be trampled upon, or anybody who opposes their view should not be permitted to express themselves or must be shut off and banished from society. And so you can't work for the state if they're in power. You can't say anything. They must control and monopolize everything. And you're a demon and you're evil and you're a criminal. Listen, the PPP cannot demonize me. My work and my advocacy precedes me. My Christianity and my love for the people and love for serving people and ensuring that people's rights are respected precedes me. So in the United States of America, everybody laughs at them every time they open their mouth to talk about me because they can't demonize me. If you walk through the streets, everybody knows me. You know why? When the police brutalizes people, they come to me. Not only Guyanese. If there's a problem in the society, we're the ones that go out there. I go with my team to communities throughout New York, and we do a program called the Law Anew. And we take the police, we take judges, we take the district attorney, we take the senators, the city council members, the assembly members, the Congress people, the United States Congress, the US attorney, the Justice Department. We take them into the community, the mayor, and we sit and we solve problems. We have when Brooklyn had thousands of warrants out for young Black people, that we worked with the district attorney's office to get rid of those warrants, to give justice to those people. Some young person would have been riding on the sidewalk and innocently and didn't know they couldn't do that and got a ticket and forgot to go to court. They have a warrant. So any police officer interacts with them and gets their name, they'll be arrested. We helped to solve that problem, CGID and myself, based on my leadership. We were able to work with the district attorney's office in Brooklyn on a program to relieve immigrants who were facing deportation because of those same plea deals or something they would have may have made. We had about 8,000 immigrants facing deportation. Why? Because they got arrested on nonviolent petty offenses that are deportable, and the immigration was coming on the Safe Communities program. ICE was coming and hold them and put them in deportation. Based on our advocacy, and not our advocacy only, advocacy of other community organizations, the district attorney came up with a program with the courts to have judges review those convictions and reduce them from deportable offenses like violations, which would be like spitting on a train or something like that, which then remove them from that category of being deportable immigrants. So we've done a lot of work in New York. As a matter of fact, everybody praised us in New York because police officers who didn't understand the law were arresting people driving with their national driver's license who were not from New York. And a Guyanese soccer player came here and he was unlawfully arrested and charged for driving with his Guyanese license. And the law allows that. And we give some licks to the NYPD. We advocated all the way to the mayor and the police commissioner. I met with Commissioner Bratton on the issue. And because of our advocacy, the New York City Police Department revised their policy on traffic stops and dealing with immigrants who didn't have license, New York State license, but who were otherwise licensed from other countries. So we do a lot of work, and people know the work that we do. We know our elected officials, we have access to them, we could pick up the phone and call them, and because of that, we use that access to empower our community, we use that access to bring resources to the community and help stand up for the rights of our community and community members. And Guyanese are at the forefront of that. So when the PPP tried to tell people I'm a criminal, everybody laughs at them. And the funny thing is, the PPP's politics is so poisonous. It would not take the country anywhere. Why your opponent has to be a criminal? For instance, Bart Jagdeo went on critics and spoke a bunch of lies about me. I don't know what is so evil about the PPP that they have to tell lies in order to counteract somebody else's political point of view. So told a bunch of lies. My attorney wrote him, and he told the guy in the police force to put out a wanted bulletin for me, as if he's Vladimir Putin. And then you had Anil Nanlal working with conspiring with the police to frame me all the way in New York, as if that's going to work. And now trying to procure the United States law enforcement to fight his proxy vendetta against me because I've called for justice for his crimes. It's not going to work. And I think, if anything, it's going to damage the country, because members of Congress are willing to now introduce a bill to sanction Guyana. So I don't know who advised these people, but they can't demonize me. I am not a criminal. I have never been arrested for a crime in my life. Anil Nanlal can't say the same thing. Barjagde can't say the same. None of them could touch me. I don't have a criminal history. But they want to project me as a criminal because they are scared of me. They're scared to death of my advocacy and my influence and my big mouth, because they think they alone have big mouths. But I can talk. I'm an intelligent, brilliant human being. Yo, let me toot my own horn. My parents sent me to school and got me educated, and I can stand up to any one of them at any time. I can compete with them when it comes to policy, when it comes to whatever. I can compete with them anywhere, anytime. And that's what they don't like. And they think by demonizing me or attempting to demonize me and project me as a criminal, which is what they are, elected officials here would be scared of me and wouldn't want to associate with me. And then I'll have to stay quiet in some corner, isolated. It's not going to happen. I am here. They're out there chanting, oh, they're going to bring me home to kill me. And let me say one other thing before I shut up my big mouth. Anil Nanlal came to this country after we had a protest. He jumped on TV and said, I'm a convicted criminal in America and whatever. He's going to come to New York and deal with me. We're like, okay, you don't even have to look for me when you come. We're going to come meet you. We went to New York and we had a hell of a protest against him. He was so scared he had to get security to big guns to protect him and whatever, like if we want to kill him. The next day, he engaged in a conspiracy to have me killed. He even named the hitman. That's what we received, the information we received. A law enforcement professional witnessed it. And the person was so disturbed by his criminal conspiracy that the person left the meeting and called myself and called the police. So if he is talking about coming back, let him come back to New York and face the consequences. Let him come back and go and talk to the detectives. The FBI is now investigating the matter. Let him come to New York and go and talk to the FBI. Since he thinks that he's so powerful that he could come to New York and organize for somebody to be killed, come back to New York now and go talk to the FBI. Don't bother with me. Come back, talk to the FBI. He's powerful. Instead of that, he is like a little pussy cat, a little cat. I mean, a little tiny cat, hiding behind the police commissioner. Ask the police commissioner to call the NYPD to tell the NYPD Rickford Burke made this stuff up. And don't bother with him. He's just crazy. And Nanlal is a good guy. And the police commissioner called the NYPD to try to obstruct the investigation, which is now another investigation, because this is a society that upholds the rule of law. And so every time they open their mouth and they try to create a problem with me, they commit crimes under US law. And so at some point in time, they'll have to face the consequences. So if I were him, I would more worry about the FBI investigating him than trying to implicate me in some crime that they fabricated and made up.
But you know, it's amazing. It's amazing. We have so many issues here. We have so many unsolved murders, so many cases that have gone cold, that the Attorney General and the Commissioner of Police acting now that they don't find the time to instruct their officers to go and get the evidence to bring the perpetrators to justice. But they're finding the time to run behind one man, Rickford Burke. One man. We got Courtney Crummy Wing, who was killed. To date, we can't find the killer. To date, there is no evidence, no information that can lead to us getting any evidence to be able to capture that person who would have killed Courtney. We had the guy Holodar who shot himself. That went cold. Well, we heard that the guy shot himself. That went cold. We have all these issues of these young men who were killed. Some of them, their bodies were found. Others, they can't find them up to now. We can't bring closure to those cases. But one man is taking up the time of these officers who are holding, these officials, as a matter of fact, who are holding high positions in Guyana. One man. And it's not to say that this man was found with an unlicensed gun. This man was found plotting against to kill somebody. This man was found with cocaine in his suitcase or anything of this sort. But their time is being spent on this one man. Well, this man, Rickford Burke, got to be a special man, an extra special man. That you know,
I
is
am.
really got
Yes,
some
I am.
magnet. He got some magnet that attracting these guys. But Rickford, apart from that, we have seen you struggling for all of these, for the poor people, the ordinary people in Guyana. We don't want to touch Mocha yet, but we saw the vendors by the hospital. We saw the whole story about the Henry boys, Naresh Singh. We saw Quinton Bacchus. We saw the boy Headley, and we've seen so many others that you're fighting for. All of those public servants who have been dismissed from their jobs, all because it is presumed that they are coalition supporters. What has been? I mean, you've not been living here for the longest while. You've not been here. I know for sure that you still have relatives here. As a matter of fact, your nephew is one of the young men who has been implicated and charged for terrorism. What is this? What is this stimulus? What is it that has caused you to dedicate so much of your time fighting for the ordinary people?
Well, I've lived more years outside of Guyana in the United States than in Guyana, and so I'm oriented to ensuring fairness and justice. We ensure that Black people who have throughout history been disadvantaged and subjugated and marginalized in this country, we fight to make sure that our rights are respected. There's special laws to make sure our rights are respected. There are organizations that were formed hundreds of years ago to ensure that our interests are protected and that there is empowerment of Afro-Guyanese. And with that knowledge and that skill set that I have, I cannot sit down quietly and see my people in Guyana suffer at the hands of people who think that they are from apartheid South Africa. I cannot sit back and see the country that slaves built, their descendants being disrespected and subjugated and victimized and marginalized for no reason. For no reason. I cannot sit back and see that Guyana has so much natural resources, where now we have oil wealth, that these dictators in the PPP can sit back and determine who must be rich and who must be poor, and who must be a criminal and who must be criminalized and who must not, who must live in poverty and who must live as oligarchs. I cannot. And so that's why I speak out. I abhor injustice. When I see what they did to her in Boston and lie and try to get away with it, what they did to Kevin Andrews in Grove, you spoke about Headley, what they did to Quinn and Bacchus. My God, if it weren't for those people, those women in Golden Grove, and I lived in Golden Grove, if it wasn't for those people that came out and released the videos and marched and picketed, and they would have gotten away with killing Quinton Bacchus, murdering him and lying about his murder. The Guyana police force officially lied 3 times about the circumstances under which Quinton Bacchus was murdered. I know Quinton Bacchus' family. Some of his relatives and I were schoolmates. I cannot sit back and live in a society where, we have justice, we have a rule of law. Yes, we have racism, but we fight against it and we win. And I cannot sit back and see those things happen in the country where I was born, happening to people I know, happening to people I support and sympathize. No, it should not happen. And I have access to government officials in this country. And I want to make sure that I use my resources, my energy, my time, whenever I'm available, and brief our elected officials on what is happening here. And we have begun to realize something, Coretta. I believe there's some sort of disconnect between what is happening on the ground and what is being fed to the United States government, the executive branch. There's a disconnect between Congress and the executive branch. And that disconnect comes because members of Congress are on the ground with their community. They have to be elected every 2 years. That's why they are forced to go and talk to the people and ask for their votes every 2 years. I guess the framers of the Constitution, the US Constitution, wanted them to remain in touch with their constituents so that they could go there and represent their issues. So members of Congress throughout the United States, anywhere there's a Guyanese community, they know what is happening in Guyana. That's why Albino Cerise in New Jersey, Jersey City, could call for equitable governance and for the resources of Guyana to be equitably distributed for the benefit of all. That's why Hank Johnson in Atlanta could have done the same thing. That's why Yvette Clarke in Brooklyn could do the same thing. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's now the Democratic leader, can do the same thing. They're in touch with their constituents. But I don't know that the executive branch of the United States government understands what is happening in Guyana. And so we now have to formulate a new strategy to ensure that the executive branch is just as in tune with the congressional or the legislative branch to help bring about a change in the US foreign policy. We cannot have a racist government in Guyana and have the United States government, this Biden administration, a Democratic administration that got into power on the votes of Black people, mostly, or all of the Black votes almost went to the Democrats. We cannot allow a racist government to thrive and the United States government have a normal relationship when they're punishing countries like Myanmar for racism and police brutality and a police state and undemocratic practices. They're punishing North Korea for that. They're sanctioning North Korea. They're sanctioning Iran. They're sanctioning Russia. And so many other countries. And Guyana is getting a pass. We have to change that. We have to change that. I'm not sure if it's the diplomatic representation on the ground. I'm not sure if it's at the State Department. I know it's not at the White House, because when we talk to people at the White House, they are not aware of some of these things. When we talk to some people at State, they're like, well, we hear some things, but we didn't know it was so bad and all that. We have to change that. And now we will redouble our effort this same year to make sure that the White House and the State Department understand what is happening on the ground in Guyana. And thank God now we have the Democratic leader who's my congressman, and the congressman in the other district is Yvette Clarke. She is now the first vice president of the Congressional Black Caucus. So our Congress people now have advanced to senior leadership in Congress. And we will make sure that they transmit to the executive branch, the State Department, and the White House what we're telling them and the evidence we're giving them of inequitable governance, of racism, of racial discrimination, of apartheid governance. We'll make sure that that message gets to the White House and to the State Department.
Well, you know, Rickford, while we're happy to hear all of that, you're doing so much. You and your entire team there, and all those persons who you're reaching out to, you're doing so much. But yet we recognize that here you don't see a whole lot of it happening, and people want to know why. But I can tell you that, like the teacher said today, we're dealing with a different breed of people, and so while persons would want to express themselves openly, they fear victimization. They fear that they are going to be transferred from one point to another. They fear that they are going to, as teachers, they're going to be harassed in schools. And you know, what we see coming out here is not a group of people who often proclaim to love and care. We see a brutal group of people who sit in the seat of government and think they own Guyana, and they own everybody in Guyana, and they must direct you how you should speak and what you should say when you speak. I heard just this afternoon we have, and let me take you to the education sector. You know that our education system is on a downward trend. The plane is going down. And as much as they're saying, oh, we're having this and we're doing that and we're doing the other, if you tell us about what transpired during your days at school and we compare, we're going to see a totally different situation. And you know why it's different? Because then, and you are going to agree with me, and I'm sure our viewers are going to agree with us, that then we had leaders who were fit, let me use those words, fit and proper, leaders who respected themselves, so they were able to gain the respect of others. Could you imagine? We have a minister of education who go out there. First, she views out a former US ambassador. And then she goes into the National Assembly to tell opposition members about how they ought to behave, and that young people are listening to us. And this is the very woman who went to a man's house and abused him out. This is the very woman who every 2 minutes you see her on Facebook cussing out somebody. And then she expects the children in school to behave different. The children can't behave different when you are the head there making yourself what you're not supposed. As soon as you criticize anything that she does, she's ready to abuse you. And we got loads and loads of issues in the schools that she's not finding the time to get her officers to deal with.
I think I lost you. I'm not sure if you're hearing me. Can you hear me?
I am hearing you.
I'm
Operator,
hearing you
could
now.
you
Okay.
check? Good.
I'm hearing now.
I was saying that our education system, it must take a downward spiral. It must be going down because of the person we got leading the education sector. When you don't have respect for yourself, then how you expect others to have respect for themselves and would want to behave better? I don't know if you heard the part when I spoke about where she started off by abusing out the US ambassador. She went to his house and she put on a fine music on him. And so what we have in school, the children cussing out in school, the children fighting in school. We all saw the video there where you were hearing rape in the National Assembly. And these are the people who want to come to lecture to people now to talk about who is this, who is that, who is the other, when they have no moral authority to speak to anybody. Jagdio can't tell anybody about anything, because he treated his wife, and this is not what we are saying, this is what she said publicly, that he treated her bad. He lied to the nation when he said that they were legally married. But, you know, these are the people who, forgetting their past and forgetting what they have been doing and what they continue to do, but they want to chastise people now. We talk about the ethnic cleansing, and they want to counteract that by saying it's not true and it's not true and it's not true. I'm sure you would have had lots and lots of information on that. I want to hear on our viewers, for our viewers' sake, let's hear your take on the ethnic cleansing. And we don't want to go way back to the 23 years because we're not going to be finished tonight. But if you can talk about what transpired from 2020 to now.
Well, it's well known. The country knows that I'm not even there, and I know I have the evidence that they fired over 3,000 people, people who still don't have jobs. They are so evil. Excuse me. They're so evil that they don't consider that these women that they have fired because of a so-called association with the political opposition, they have families. It has a ripple effect throughout the society. But that's their mindset. These people think they own the country. They think that they are more superior. They want to impose ethnic supremacy. They're like the KKK. They think they're supreme and superior to Black people. And you would recall that at GCOM, you had an attorney telling Irfan Ali, an attorney who should be upholding the rule of law, telling Ali, oh, you see this police officer there? Remember to punish her when you become president. Why? The police officer was following her instructions that they were not supposed to go into the counting area at GCOM. But they think that they're so entitled. They went and they broke down the door and they created havoc. They, perpetuated terrorism. against the staff of GCOM. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. Every time they do this, the law enforcement, the police, to me, always, whether, regardless of which party is in government, the police always acts with deference to the PPP because they bully them and they are scared that whenever they get into power, they would mark their faces and they will
Yeah.
execute vendetta against them. And it starts because of poor leadership. Poor leadership. Barry Jagdeo incited violence against the president of Guyana. Nothing happened. He incited violence against the prime minister and the ministers of the government, directly in breach of the Cybercrime Act that they're telling me who don't live in the country that I am breaching because I'm criticizing them. Nothing happened. Bart Jagdeo went to Albion and said that members of the military are criminals. They kicked down people's doors and robbed them and whatever he said. Nothing happened. Not even a squeak from the GDF. But somebody went to Buxton and said something that the GDF thought was a little inappropriate, and they rushed out and they condemned it. In the meantime, you have a man who should know better, who is a former commander-in-chief of the armed forces, who is testifying to his East Indian supporters that the black men in the GDF are kicked down the door criminals. They espouse black people, and they don't like me because I'm frank with that. They're calling the people in the GDF criminals, when all of them thieving money and committing fraud and getting arrested. And people are in their basement with supposed Chinese businessmen organizing a $500 million bribe. But they're calling the black young boys who are prepared to lay down their lives to protect them, calling them black people in the GDF criminals. And us as a society have accepted it because we're scared that if we say something and condemn it, Bart Jagdeo will retaliate and victimize us. It is unbelievable to me that to this day, no one has condemned Bart Jagdeo for calling GDF. He said all of them. He said the army is unprofessional. They come in there and they kick down your doors, and the PPP will have to protect the Indian people. You can't get more racist than that. You cannot be more egregiously violating the Racial Hostilities Act than saying that. Suppose those GDF boys go and surround his house. What are they going to go and say? Oh, they're trying to intimidate him. They're trying to intimidate him. We cannot accept these kinds of atrocities from the PPP. They're in government. If they're elected by the people, we respect that. We will go and fight another day and campaign hard and register our voters and come and fight at the next elections. But we know that they're not there based on free and fair elections. They were installed. And then to boot, they insult the armed forces because they're majority black. And then they turn around and try to use these same people to abuse the population that they sent. It can't work. We have to have a change in Guyana. We have to.
And so you missed the part with the ethnic cleansing. I think you barely tapped on it.
Yes, I did. Sorry. Well, it is because of ethnic supremacy. Ethnic cleansing comes about because of a perception that they're superior to others who are second-class citizens. So they clean out people whenever they come. It's the same thing that happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina in the former Yugoslavia, where the Muslims wanted to exterminate the Christians. So in Guyana, you have the same thing. And the PPP, in Guyana, it's race. It's race. East Indians who think that they're superior to black people and who believe that we must not serve in government if we have a different political viewpoint or political persuasion. And so they cleanse the government service of people who are opposed to them, or people who are perceived to be opposed to them, or people who are associating with their political opponents. They believe the country belongs to them. I happen to think that somewhere in the PPP, they're following the colonialist playbook because they want to subjugate black people. They want to make sure that we live in poverty. They want to make sure that we don't benefit from the natural resource wealth that Guyana is receiving. We don't benefit from the oil revenues. And so that's why they're giving all the contracts to their East Indian friends and family. They're shutting us out from business opportunities. They're removing us from public service jobs of position. I understand from a source within the U.S. government that President Ali has been pointing out to them that there's a black head of the judiciary, and there's a black head of the police, and there's a black head of the army, and there's a black this, and there's blacks in the government. That is, he's confirming what is known as apartheid governance, where you have a minority of the people, a cabal, trying to impose their political views and wishes and power on the majority. That is what apartheid is all about. So you could have a head of the army. Is he independently making decisions and policy decisions for the army? No. Is the guy the police force commissioner making decisions on his own? No, he's following political objectives. And he is running the police force only for the interests of the Indian supporters of the PPP. The head of the judiciary, they're trying to take away her powers. They're passing all sorts of, proposing all sorts of legislation to even control the money, right? So, yes, you have these people in power, but they control them politically. They put people in there that they can control. And if you happen to exercise some sort of independence, they marginalize you and sideline you like they're doing to Paul Williams right now. I don't know why he doesn't take them to court, because they have no power to remove him from being police commissioner. But they moved him. Why? He's black and he's not compliant. He's not a compliant black man who's going to sit down there and say, yes, my lord. Yes, my lord. Go and arrest Rickford Burke. Yes, my lord. Go and shoot down those black people in Golden Grove. Yes, my lord. He's not going to do that. But they want to put a compliant Negro there, and that's why they have Higgins there.
Well, you know, we have seen that not only in the Guyana Police Force. We've seen that in the Guyana Defense Force, where officers have been sidelined. They're sent here, they're seconded here, they're seconded there. We saw that happen in the prison service. They've been seconded here and seconded there. We are seeing that in the public service as well. You're seconding people here, you're putting them there. They maintain their positions with their salaries and other benefits, but they're not doing the actual work that they were appointed to do. And we are seeing this also happening in the education sector, where officers who are of Afro-Guyanese descent, who are of African descent, you are seeing them pushing them here and pushing them there and pushing them out. Just yesterday, we had a note that was sent to me where some teachers who applied to become cadet officers within the Ministry of Education, they went through the process. They've spent 4 years as a cadet officer. All they're waiting for now is to be commissioned, because there's no public service commission. And they were told, many of them were told in no uncertain terms, we have to revert you to your schools because we have too many black officers, cadet officers in the education system. We have to mix it, we have to balance it. And I mean, if people can go that length to tell persons who are qualified those kinds of things, then you understand where we are going. So when we hear this one Guyana flam, which I wanted you to comment on, it is not real. It is not real. I noticed persons sent me homes that were built by men on mission, and they're comparing a home that was built here and a home that was built there, and you're seeing a vast difference. So when we hear this talk about one Guyana, many times I have to spin around to see what they're really talking about, because we don't have a one Guyana.
Well, it's an interesting thing, huh? It seems as though it's oxymoronical, right? They want to have one Guyana in areas where East Indians traditionally don't operate, which is in the military and the police force, but they go into business. So the business sector and the public sector, sorry, the private sector, that's dominated by East Indians. Why don't they advocate for equity there or equality there, right? The same thing they're telling GDF officers, oh, we have too many black commissioned officers, so we're going to stop promoting black people and promote Indians and bring more Indians into the force. Same thing with the leadership, too many black officers. We want to balance this thing. Why don't you do the same thing to bring a counterbalance to all the East Indians that dominate the business sector, right?
You know.
Why don't you do the same thing? Because as far as I'm concerned, that is some form of affirmative action. So if you're saying that you need affirmative action to bring a balance to areas where Black people dominate, why don't you just do the same thing to bring a balance to areas that East Indians dominate, which is the agriculture sector? Why don't you start empowering new um, farmers? Why don't you start ensuring that Black contractors who are eligible and not getting contracts get contracts so that you can
Mhm.
bring equity and balance to the procurement process? Why don't they do that? Why don't they do that? Right? No. What they want is dominance. They realize that East Indians are not drawn to the uniform services. So what they're doing is bringing in plants at a higher level, bringing in people at a certain level, and put them in among the leadership, because we don't want all these Black people in the army, right? So that you're gonna supersede. Like right now, they're superseding two people to bring Omar Khan to make him the chief of staff when the current chief of staff goes off on retirement, right? Um, why don't they do that in the procurement process? Why don't they bring 5 contractors who are not PPP supporters but are Black people trying to make a living, professional people? Why don't they do that and inject them into the procurement process to bring about some balance and equity? They're not prepared to do that. They're not prepared to have no one Guyana. One Guyana is a counter slogan that means nothing to our charges and exposure of their racism. One Guyana is just a gimmick. It's words. It's for cosmetics. You know, like when you take an ugly pig and you dress them up with makeup and lipstick, right? That's what One Guyana is. Beneath that, it's an ugly set of nasty, evil racists. That's what
Mhm.
One Guyana represents. And so they want to paint this picture that, oh, we believe in oneness. And they didn't even have to do that, right? We already have a motto, a national motto: one
Mhm.
people, with one nation, with one destiny. You know what? They don't believe that we're one people. They don't believe that we're one nation because they're trying to split it in two. And obviously, they don't believe that the destiny of development belongs to all Guyanese. They want them and their own East Indian supporters alone to enjoy that destiny. That's why they've created this nonsense called One Guyana. It means one East Indian Guyana. Alawi. Alawi in this one boat, Alawi, my ethnic supporters and me. That's what One Guyana means. That's my definition of it.
Well, Rickford, I must say for our viewers that we have quite a lot of Indo-Guyanese who are standing up to this, who are supporters of the coalition, who are part of the coalition. And you know what? They come in for a whole lot of blows because as
Right.
far as the PPP are concerned, they're not supposed to be with the coalition. And they don't really talk about the coalition, they talk about the PNC, the PNC, the PNC. And so um those who are not Afro-Guyanese that are feeling the blunt of the PPP's wickedness, we have our Indo
Indeed.
brothers and
Indeed.
sisters, we have our
And
Amerindian brothers and
Amerindians, yes.
sisters, we have our Portuguese brothers and sisters. As long as you are of a different, your opinion is different from theirs and you don't support what they are doing, they put lashes on you. We have a new thing that is developing now in the education sector. I must say this to our viewers, where instructions and a semi memo is sent to head teachers asking them to say on that document how many Afro Guyanese you have on staff, how many Indo Guyanese you have on staff. I've never heard this in my life. In all my days of teaching, I've never heard this. But here is it, they're sending to get this kind of information because, and head teachers are giving specific timing with which they have to send this information because the president wanted, because I know some head teachers called to find out, well, why do you want to know the ethnicity of my staff? What they got to do with their qualification? What it has to do with them performing in schools? Why you want that? Oh, the president wanted. So you notice the line that these people are going down, and then they want to talk about who's racial and who's racist. Now I'm sure they're going to look at that information when they would have gotten it to see what is happening there, and then they're going to talk about balancing the education system. Maybe that's why they're bringing in so many 3 days per week, 10 hours per month workers, these workers that they're bringing, and they're flooding the schools with quite a lot of them. And if you look at what is happening, quite a lot of them are Indo-Guyanese. Now, I don't want our viewers to get us wrong to think that we don't want our Indo brothers and sisters to have jobs. But the thing is, you cannot fill the schools and fill other spaces with only one set of people. That in itself is wrong. If you're going to employ 10 hours per month or 3 days per week workers, then it must be balanced across the scale. So you must have a number allotted for each race. So many for our Indo brothers, so many for Afro-Guyanese, so many for our Amerindian brothers, so many for our Chinese brothers, our Portuguese. It must be balanced, but we're not seeing that. But yet you come to tell us about one Guyana. Yet you come to tell us that you care. Yet you come to tell us all the things. Oh, you're doing this. You're building roads. You're building more homes. But people can't afford these homes that you're building. They could hardly live. They can't eat roads. And I remember one of the PPP ministers said that during the David Granger's leadership and his administration in office, when they said, but people can't eat roads. And when you tell them that now, they get all upset with you.
Coretta, the PPP is obsessed with race. They're obsessed with race because that's the only thing they know. They want their people to be happy, and not even their people. They want their cabal, their family and friends, the rich set of East Indians and the middle class ones, they want those people to be, because they despise the poor East Indian. And so they're upset with race, number one. And number two, the racism issue is hurting them in the international community, is hurting them with investors. But they don't care because they have to make a judgment that they promise those people that this is exactly what they'll do. They promise their voters and supporters that they will be an ethnocracy. They will only govern for them. It's like Trump. Well, remember the Trump people are advising them. Mm-hmm. And you said they like to call you people racist, especially those of us from abroad. And I want to make it very clear. The PPP wants to judge me and other Guyanese abroad in developed societies. They want to judge us with their measuring stick. They want us to be compliant with what their notion of racism is. Them calling us racist, they don't mean it. It is just projection, Coretta. I live in America, for instance. They're telling me, oh, if you call us racist and point out the fact that Bar Jagdeo said those black people in the GDF are racist, you're creating racial hostilities because you will create animosity between Bar Jagdeo, an East Indian man, and the people in the army. I don't give a damn. I am saying and analyzing what he says. I am not guided by no Guyanese context of what racism is. I live in America. I live in America. I am seeing it for what it is from my orientation in America. We speak truth to power. We create institutions to fight racism. We highlight it. We expose it. We try to eradicate, to weed it out. That's how I see racism, from through that lens. And them throwing back the racism thing at us. We don't have the capacity to be racist in America. I am not sitting here expounding hate for East Indian people. That's racism. That's not what I'm doing. I am exposing people who hate and express hate and demonstrate hate for African Guyanese. To just come to my argument to say, well, he's racist because he's talking about East Indian people. That's not racism. Racism is a demonstration of hate. Racism is a congenital prejudice that people hold, and then use their offices or their positions of authority to penalize people based on that inherent congenital prejudice. That's racism. I'm sitting here, Rickford Burke. I don't have the capacity to deny jobs to East Indian people. I don't have the capacity to not give contracts to East Indian people. That's racism. I am making an analysis of it and giving a report on it and condemning it. That doesn't make me a racist. It makes me an advocate against racism. But they think that they can label us as racist because, oh, you call me racist, I call you back racist. You call me a dog. It's like Donald Trump and his, yes, I'm a puppet, you're a puppet. That's them. They don't have the intellectual capacity to understand what we're talking about. They don't have the understanding that we are from a different society. We have to call it as we see it. Why? Because we live in a society, we experience it. When I walk into an elevator in an all-white company and the white lady with her purse just grabs her purse and clutches it, don't mind if I have on my $2,000 Brooks suit. She see me as a black man and thinks that I'm going to rob her. I face that every day. No East Indian person in Guyana is facing that. And they have to understand what we're talking about. We're talking about demonstrated prejudice against black people. And that's what they're doing. When they refuse to give blacks contracts, when they're fixing roads only for East Indians, when their policies and practices only benefit East Indians, that's racism. That's what we're talking about. You're not seeing any black person do that. You didn't see the Granger administration do that. That's what we want to fix. And I'm wondering, Coretta, we've been saying for 3 years now, these people are racist. We want equality. We want racial justice. We want the injustice of black people to stop. We have gotten nowhere. We have gotten nowhere. It tells me that the PPP's philosophy is racism. I don't care what you do. We're not going to meet with black people. We will not meet with black leaders. We will not meet with black members of parliament. We will not ensure that there's black empowerment. No, we're intransigent. We want to show you that we're going to govern this country only for black people. If the PPP was willing to have a peaceful, harmonious nation, they will meet with the black leaders, talk with them, ask them to give them examples of the racism that they're talking about, and right there try to address it. They have never done it. They have never done it. It is their intent to be racist. It is their intent to make sure that blacks don't benefit from the resources and wealth and natural patrimony of the country. It is their intent. They don't care what we do, and it has to change. And I think in order to change it, that change has to come from the international. That pressure has to come from both within and without. It has to also come from the international community. The PPP will not change. We have been protesting for 3 years. Nothing has happened. They've not moved 1 inch. They have not given black people nothing. They don't mean to give us an inch of the country. They think all of Guyana is theirs. They think Guyana is a plantation and they're the modern slave owners. Look at what they did in Mucka. If those people could have gotten a horse with whips and whipped those black people in Mucka, they would have done it, because that's how they see themselves, as the new plantocracy. And they're upset when we talk about it. But if they want us to stop talking about it, Coretta, they have to end the racism. They have to govern the country equitably. They have to govern the country for everybody.
You see, Rickford, and we will have to continue to champion this cause, because this is what it is, and we have to say it just the way it is. We have the Critchlow Labour College. Since Barrett Jagdeo was president, he withheld the subvention. The same thing they're doing to IPADA G, even though the court ruled, the same thing they've done there. So every institution that is black owned, that is governed or operated primarily by blacks, they want to shut that out. And you know, the Critchlow Labour College would have given a second chance to many, many of the senior PPP operatives. The Critchlow Labour College, but they've withheld the subvention, and you've been writing and you've been doing all sorts of things, and they cannot restore the subvention.
Karen, I believe we encourage it as well. They should be taking them to court. Flood the courts with lawsuits. Flood the courts with lawsuits. Overwhelm the courts. Let the courts adjudicate on these issues. Even though traditionally we might think the court don't have jurisdiction, let the courts say that. Let the courts of Guyana rule that the PPP is the sole arbiter and cash owner of the country, and whatever they say goes. Let the courts rule that. Ipalaje took them to court. The judge said they should settle it. Let's see what they'll do. I think Critchlow Labour College should take them to court. I think AGDA should take them to court. They're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to the East Indian Arrival Committee, but they're refusing to give AGDA money when actor traditionally got an allocation for the emancipation celebration. That they're out to destroy the Black culture. And we must not let them do it. Take them to court. Um, Take them all the way to the CCJ. I know we'll have a challenge with attorneys, and that's why I think there should be a Black Bar Association. That's why I think there should be the equivalent of the ACLU in Guyana. We need a Civil Liberties Association or union or something to champion the cause of the rights of institutions and citizens who are disenfranchised, whose rights are trampled upon, whose liberties and privilege are taken away. We must have an institution to protect them. And that's why we need a Black Lawyers Association, we need a Black Chamber of Commerce, we need a Black Private Sector Commission, not because we want to be racist, but because we want to protect the interests of people in those sectors, of people of African Guyanese who are disadvantaged in those sectors.
Us. But I have to say, Rickford, that we just saw we just observed the 53rd Republic anniversary of this country, and that was a mess. As a matter of fact, we celebrated this year, and any country, any administration that is governing should be proud of his or her history. We just saw the late LFS Burnham would have been 100 years old this year if he was alive. Now, this is a man, this is a visionary who made Guyana what it is today. So when they jump around and talk about housing schemes and all kind of thing, Burnham, LFS Burnham did that. And you know, just the same way, well, they've demonized LFS Burnham, just the same way they're trying to demonize you. And everything about Burnham, they're trying to kill. But you know, as a party, we have had to let them know that regardless of what you do, the legacy of LFS Burnham will continue to live on in this country. It will continue to live on in the Caribbean and the further fields. You can't wipe it out. And this is what the PPP are about. They are destructive, and they are envious, they are racist, and they just don't like people who don't see things the way they see things. Lots and lots of institutions, the co-op societies, they're trying to destroy them. If you look at what is happening, especially in Black communities where they have co-op societies, they're going there and they're using a Black minister to decide this is not right, that is not right, we're going to shut you down. I mean, these are some of the cultures that came with our foreparents, where they learned to throw box hand and those kinds of things. And it is because of co-op. That is why we have so many villages where they pooled their monies and they were able to buy those villages. They want to take that away from us. But you know what? They want to promote, they're promoting themselves and what they believe and their culture. And we cannot operate in a society in that way when we have persons who came from different continents and different races with their different cultures. We were taught that we're a multiracial society, multicultural society, and we must be proud of our heritage. Why do we want to kill one set and push up another set? And that's why we will continue to condemn the PPP. That is why we will continue to call them out. All of their ministers, we will continue to call them out. You know, like you said earlier, they heard the statements from the representatives coming from the WPA, and they made a big noise about it. But I didn't hear our friend Ali make any comment when Nigel Darumlal spoke about the dildo in Parliament. I didn't hear him say anything on that, you know? And so these people, they are just fixed in their ways. Like Sherrod Duncan would say, my honorable colleague would say, they stink and dirty. And that's how we have to call them. We have to call them out as trench crappers. We have to call them out as these names, because that's what they represent. They're not about building this nation for everyone. They're just about themselves. Rickford, we're going to take your closing words. And I know I noticed my phone is going off the hook, and persons are sending me loads and loads of messages asking me to talk about this or talk about that. But we can't talk about everything tonight. But we just have to let persons know that this government, this installed government, and I know they get very upset when you call them installed government, but that's who they are, an installed government. They didn't win the elections. And when they talk about the riggers, they are the real riggers, because when you look at what came out of that recount, When you look at what came out of that recount, and these people still bold and brass face to talk about the PNC rigging elections. But Rickford, we've got to do what we have to do, and nobody will silence us. Your closing remarks.
Thank you. Well, my encouragement to the Guyanese people is to speak out. Everybody have to speak out. Everybody has to stand up. Rather, everybody has to speak out and stand up. If we all stand up and speak out, we'll make progress. If everybody stands together, we can't have some people cowering under their beds and like, oh, I'm scared of the PPP. They know that they can intimidate you with the police force. If you notice any dictatorship around the world, they're only bad when the police with guns are backing down,
Yep.
right? And so we have to make, but the police are what, 5,000? There's 700 and something thousand people in the country,
Yep.
right? The people have to stand up. That's their right. That's your right. You're not breaking the law. Don't mind how much of you they charge with terrorism. They have to make sure that they govern the country. The people of Guyana, Guyanese, whether you're at home or abroad, have to make sure that they hold this government accountable, or else the rails of democracy will fall off. The PPP does not believe in democracy. The PPP does not believe in equal rights. The PPP does not believe in justice. And we will only make sure that Guyana maintains some semblance of democracy if the people stand up and speak out. We cannot be apathetic. I want to see all those young people that going to Juve parties and hanging out on the seawall and just party. I want to see all of them registered and going out to vote in the next election. Why? Because that's their future. That's their future. A lot of them are complaining about they don't have jobs. Well, go and register and vote, and we'll have a better economy that will have jobs for everybody. Right now, we have an economy that only caters for a certain segment of the society. They have to see politics as a bread and butter issue. If I go and vote and I put the right government in power, my life and my well-being would be improved and enhanced. That's how the young people have to see it. Stop complaining. Be the change agent. Work to empower your community. I've been talking over the last week about, and I'll close after, I'll shut up after this, about a phenomenal experience I had. Coretta, a young man by the name of Michael, I don't remember his last name. Michael was shot and killed in Brooklyn. He was 19 years old. I think it's Michael Brown. In the 50s, as we say in Brooklyn in the 50s, those streets that are 51, 52, 53, 54 in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. And he was Guyanese and Antiguan. The Antiguan Consul General called me because, of course, they all know that I'm Guyanese. And I went out there, and when I got out there, I saw a huge crowd of young people, all around the same age, 19, 18, 21, 20, 21. And one of them came up to me and started to talk. He was commenting that something has to happen or else all of them will be killed out. He himself said to me that he had just been released from jail. He's from St. Vincent. And never forget that young man. His name is Craig. And he said to me, what can you do to help us? All of these young people you see here, none of us work. None of us, or most of us don't work. And I said, well, you have to get training. If you need a job, you have to be trained. He said, well, train us. We don't want to be going to people. Some people can't afford. They don't want to go to colleges. Come and bring the training to us. Why don't you all do that? Try that. Bring the training to us. And as a result of that, we said, well, we were going to have this training. And then we realized in Brooklyn, every corner is a church. Every corner is a church. And the church is a haven for the community. And we started to organize each church to be a campus for a particular training. And we brought the people, the lecturers, whether it's in electrical engineering, whether it's in automotive technology, whether a technician, or whether it's in plumbing, whether it's in whatever, carpentry. And we had campuses all over the community where once per week, lecturers were coming in and training these young people. And at the end of that 6-month period, we connected them to jobs in the various sectors. And they were ecstatic. These young people, they couldn't believe that within 6 months they were trained and they were working with the transit authority, you're working with the electrical company, you're working at some mechanic shop. And so I give that experience because I want our young people in Buxton and Golden Grove and then Amstel and these black villages who feel disadvantaged and disenfranchised and beaten down and marginalized, that they have to become innovative and learn how to empower themselves. Reach out to the community leadership, train yourself, organize as a group and go into Exxon and ask them for jobs. Let them train you in the oil and gas sector. Don't wait for anybody to come to you. I want to encourage contractors who are bidding for contracts and not getting individual contracts, form conglomerates. If you don't have the equipment, form a merger or join with somebody who has the equipment. You might have good managerial skills. You might have a business corporate office. Everybody pool their resources together. And when you bid and you get a contract, you divide the resources. We have to find ways of empowering ourselves. We cannot sit back and say, oh gosh, these Indian people in the PPP marginalizing me. And me, and I gotta go. I left this country and go to America. No, stay right there and fight. Empower yourself. That's the message I want to see. I want to see black communities empowering themselves. I've seen a former schoolmate of mine went back to Golden Grove after 15 years or whatever, and he sent me a video. I'm embarrassed about the clogged trenches, the bush everywhere. The NDCs are not cleaning the place. Come on, community, get together. You'll clean your community up. Clean your community up. It's not going to take, if you need equipment, force the region. You have a regional chairman that support you. Ask the region for the equipment. Organize the community. Clean your environment up. That's what I want to see in Guyana. I don't want people to give up and become apathetic and say, well, the PPP thing us, we're defeated, we're defeatist, we can put down our, No, no. Come on, people, empower yourselves, empower your community. Let's get going.
Rickford, I want to thank you so much for being here with us and for expressing how you feel and for telling us who you are as Rickford Burke. More than that, we were able to let our viewers know that this is not a fight because Rickford Burke wants to be here or he wants to be there, but this is a fight because he believes that everyone must be part holders and partners in everything that we get. That we have here in terms of our resources, and more so since we have oil, it should be shared. The profits from the oil, it should be shared equally across this country so that everyone can benefit from it. But I cannot close this program, Rickford, if I don't express our sincerest condolences to the families of Mr. Hercules from Linden, the operator from Bosai who lost his life. And, this is saying to us, not only is a family suffering, but we have co-workers suffering, and we have an entire community that has been heartbroken. And it brings to mind what systems were in place. What systems were in place, and what is the Minister of Labor and his officials doing? Because here is it, we have an operator operating at 4 o'clock in the morning. Was he alone there? Was there proper lighting? Is the company in compliance with the laws of Guyana, the health and safety regulations? And we would want to find all of that out. But it is sad and it's heart-wrenching to know that a young man, and I'm going to say a young man, would have lost his life in that manner. And so we want to extend it to that family, his immediate family and other relatives, and to the people of Linden, our sincerest condolences. And we pray that God is going to bring you the comfort you need at this time. As a matter of fact, I must say, I must commend his co-workers and his relatives for standing up there and saying, continue to search. Continue to dig. You must find him, because that search would have been aborted maybe 2 or 3 days ago if those people did not stand up. And I want to say to all of us, all of our viewers, if we all continue to stand, if we stand together, we'll be able to get rid of the PPP. If we stand together, we'll be able to get them to do the things that we want them to do. So let's continue to stand together. We have recognized that we've been returned to the days of brown water, frequent blackouts, all kinds of traffic congestions, prices soaring way above our heads. We've been returned to those days. And as long as you have the PPP in power, these things are going to happen because they're a stinking, nasty, dirty set of people. I have to tell them that. And that is why you have that happening. The police are no longer interested in serving and protecting the people. Some of them are doing all kinds of other things. We have persons out there who are just overdoing everything, and they're no longer patriotic. They no longer share love. They're no longer concerned about what is happening with their fellow Guyanese. And these things happen because we have a group of people who have been practicing this, and this is what they spread across Guyana. But my viewers, I want to thank you so much for being here with us. We're going to see you again next week for another episode of Advancing the
And
Cause.
Rebecca,
We
also
will
let me.
continue to
I
fight the
want to
fight.
join those. I want to join those sentiments of
Yes, Rickford.
condolences to the Hercules family and the family, the Linden community, the co-workers at Bosai, and everyone in Linden. I send my sympathy, and on behalf of CGID and our own Guyanese community here in New York, we send our sympathies and wish you Godspeed as you lay your family member and your co-worker and your friend and community member to rest. We have you in our prayers.
Yes, you are in our thoughts, and we will do whatever it is to support you and to ensure that the company take full responsibility for what has happened and that the family is compensated. We're not going to stand idly by. And this brings us to the end of this episode of Advancing the Cause. Do stay well, take care of yourselves, be mindful of the pill that you're going to be using if by chance you happen to contract COVID. And just let me remind you that COVID is still alive and well, so be mindful of how you operate. Do take care, and may God continue to bless us all. Good night.